Just gonna do a little video because they've upped my dosage to 1.5 milligrams. That's a pill and a small pill with antipsychotics. 2 milligrams distilled in 5 milliliters of clonazepam, which is the anti-anxiety. Now, as you can see, I'm extremely sedated. I was writing a piece on the historical context from Britain's perspective, but a global historical and economic perspective of the geopolitical situation from the 1800s until the present day. I got until the 1930s, where I chose to specify more on Britain, so we can identify the problems with the modern economy, from which you can trace the fault lines all the way back to the 1930s and even further back to the 1800s, really. Because the game really changed in 1652 with the Civil War and the Industrial Revolution in the late 1700s, early 1800s. But now it's difficult even to string a sentence together because my dosage of antipsychotics has been raised. It was raised after I spoke with the doctor the day before the tribunal and asked him to see a copy of my care notes. And also I asked him to explain why he believes that I lack the capacity to understand my own mental health. So after questioning him and stating that the Mental Health Capacity Act states that it is assumed that any service user has understanding of their mental health, full stop. So that's the starting point. The starting point of the Mental Health Capacity Act is that any patient has capacity, unless proven otherwise. The Mental Health Act is slightly different, which is what I'm being detained under. That says that you are basically being detained because it is believed that you have a mental health disorder. So the two acts are kind of conflicting, and Dr. Bell kind of got the two confused. He got one confused with the other, and I'd not actually read the Mental Health Act at the time. So in a way it was a bit of a trip. I kind of tripped him up a little bit because I was talking about the Mental Capacity Act, which does affect in my case. However, the primary legislation that they're trying to use to remove all rights from me is the Mental Health Act 1983, and I've not gotten to reading all of that. However, despite that, it does say in the Mental Health Act 1983, points 2 specifically, and point 5, and section 8, I believe, or no, not specifically sections 2 and 5, that you cannot simply assume a patient to have a mental illness or disorder. It has to physically manifest itself in some form, and that has to be evidenced. And I will argue that there has been no real evidence provided. Pressured speech, speaking under pressure, a bit like this, might come from the fact that I've not had my rights in 6 days, I've not been able to go outside, I've not been able to see my friends. I feel under pressure. Racing thoughts, which again I'd contend that I don't have, might come from the fact that in order to figure this out and to actually stay one step ahead of the game, I have to think incredibly quickly, because there seems to be an entire team that's working against me to detain me here as long as possible. My mood is completely balanced. I'm not agitated. I'm not intrusive. I've been accused of being intrusive. Anyways, long story short is they've accused me of a whole list of things without providing any evidence. They've misrepresented my story, claiming that I stripped at a job. No, I was a strip-out labourer. There was no stripping involved. I was a strip-out labourer. That means that you strip out bits of the building that you don't want when you're going to renovate it. So I would argue that actually the levels of comprehension of the 5 staff that was assessing me are worse than mine. I would argue that they are lacking the capacity to understand what I'm saying, but I'm not going to, pressure them under the Mental Health Act. All I want is my respect given to me, and the respect to choose my own medication and treatment in order for me to have the best mental health possible. And being locked in here for 20 days and being only allowed 23 minutes in the garden today, and over 20 days, 4 times in the garden, totaling roughly about an hour and a half, in 20 days, when we should be allowed 40 hours, 2 hours per day, sorry, my eye's a bit itchy, is quite simply unacceptable. Now, I raised all these concerns with the doctor, and he doubled my dose of antipsychotics. You can make from that whatever deductions that you want, but I'd like to record here my drowsiness so I can compare it with other states, and you can see, and I'll be able to see exactly how this medication is working if it's working at all. Have a fantastic evening. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and hopefully see you soon in the fresh air. Well, around and amongst the fresh air.